Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Marty Ross, and we're having another conversation with Marty Ross MD tonight. As you know, this is a webinar where we're going to discuss Lyme disease. I'm glad to see a lot of people have returned this week, and also some new names as well, too. As we get started, I have to apologize for, I guess, a big technical failure that I wasn't even aware about last week. I think that for those of you that are watching about 20 minutes into the webinar, 30 minutes into the webinar, you lost contact with me. And I didn't realize that because my screen, it looked like everything was good. So I will periodically check today to see if you're all still with me. I still don't know what happened with my platform as to why it happened. So I hope it was a one-time thing. But if we continue to have problems with this happening, I'll probably look over at doing these webinars on Zoom instead. I prefer this platform for some reasons, but I need to have a reliable platform actually too. So for those of you that are new here, and actually for those of you that are returning too, there's a couple ways that you can participate in these webinars. So first, you can see what questions people have. If you're in the live version, when I take a question, I'll actually post it on your screen so you can read it along with me. If you're in the recorded version of this, I'm going to read the question out loud so you can follow what we're talking about, okay? The other thing you can do to participate is to actually write a question. And the way you do that is there's a chat box on the bottom. In that chat box, you have an option of writing a regular chat, or you can do a question. There's a little question mark. I prefer if you put everything in the regular chat, not use that question mark, okay? I tend not to get to those Q&A only or question mark areas. I tend to just focus on that chat section, all right? So if just keep that in mind as well too. The other thing, I am creating a recording of tonight's webinar, and as much as it records, last week it was 20 minutes, but my plan would be to edit that up this evening, create a summary of it, and get that out to you tomorrow morning, somewhere around 9:30 Central Standard Time, or Austin, Texas time, as I call it. All right. Let's see. What else? Oh, we have one more webinar this month. It'll be next Tuesday or Thursday. And you'll have an opportunity to sign up for that tomorrow as well. Okay. So without any further ado, let's go ahead and get started and take a question here. All right. First question is from Blossom. Hi, Blossom. Let's see. Dear Dr. Ross, I'm able to sleep well for a couple of hours at the beginning of the night, but then I start tossing and turning and have trouble staying asleep for the remainder of the cycle. I also urinate when I wake up, even if I've limited my fluid intake before bed. Do you have any suggestions for how I can improve the quality and duration of my sleep? I'm currently taking KPV, glutathione, and melatonin for it. Thank you. All right. So in terms of sleep, there's some basic sleep hygiene things that everyone should do. One of those, and let me just go through those, and then we'll talk about some herbal medicine options and even some prescription medicine options if need be for you too. All right. So first of all, you need to make sure that you're using your bedroom for sleep. And so that you're not working in your bed, you're not bringing other activities other than sleep and maybe some sexual play, but you keep everything else out of your bedroom, all right? And the reason is that it's going to make it easier for you to unwind when you're actually in the bed. Number two, turn off all your blue light devices probably about 2 or 3 hours before you go to bed. That means shut your cell phone down, stop looking at your computer screen, all right? So blue lights in those devices are stimulating. TV probably is okay, but the blue lights that are part of your computer screen and your cell phone are going to be disturbing to you, okay? Number three, try to pick the same time every night to go to sleep. All right. And that'll get you into a cycle that fits with, and your melatonin you take should be about an hour or so before you go to bed each night too. And that should be a regular time each night as well too. All right. Okay. So then if you're doing those things and you're still having sleep disturbances, there some of the medications or herbal medicines you can use. Melatonin is an option. It doesn't work for everyone. All right. Another option is to take somewhere between 300 to 600 milligrams of magnesium. Magnesium is very relaxing and can help get you into sleep. You want to use a magnesium glycinate, not a magnesium citrate or a magnesium sulfate. The reason the glycinate is it tends not to give you diarrhea, and so, or has less chance of giving you diarrhea compared to the other ones. And therefore you can take higher doses of it to help sedate you. Okay. You could stay on your melatonin and actually add magnesium to that and see if that will be enough to get you into deep sleep so that you stay in that deep sleep. Okay. If that doesn't work, another option is to take something called 5-hydroxytryptophan, which is a form of tryptophan. Tryptophan is a building block for serotonin. And if you elevate serotonin in your brain by making more of it, that can be sedating. And so one way to do that is to take 5-hydroxytryptophan. It's a 100 milligram pill. And usually a sleep dose is somewhere between 200 to 400 milligrams. Okay. All right. And you can layer that on top of a melatonin and a magnesium. All right. All right. Now, other things that you can do, there's a couple companies that I like their products that have a number of ingredients in them. So for instance, I'll show you in a minute a product I have called Sleep Formula that is built around something called L-theanine, some valerian. There's another one by Research Nutritionals called Circadian PM. You could try any of those compounds as well too to see if you're going to get sleep. All right. And then finally, if you try herbs or you try a number of herbal compounds together and they don't work, then it's time to start thinking about prescriptions. And where I like to start with prescription medicines, because it is to use a medicine that's an antidepressant medicine, but does a good job of getting you to sleep and keeping you out. And that's to take something called trazodone. Trazodone does not have any addictive potential. It does not interfere with your GABA-benzodiazepine receptors. So it's pretty safe to use, actually. Okay. And usually start somewhere around 50 milligrams at bedtime. All right. All right. So those are some ideas for you. Let me do a screen share here. I want to show you a few things here. All right. So this is my Lyme information website, Treat Lyme by Marty Ross MD. In my online guide here, there is a section called Sleep. And so there's a few articles you want to look at. First, look at this one called The Basic Steps. This is about lifestyle medicine, basic steps like getting the blue lights off, using your bedroom for sleep only, that I recommend here. Okay. Then there's another article where I talk about natural medicines. And then finally, if that's not enough, I have an article about various prescription medicines that you can use in tick-borne illnesses as well too. All right. Now, in terms of the two herbal compounds that I was just mentioning, this is my supplement store, Marty Ross MD Supplements. And so there is a section here I have called Sleep. This is my sleep aisle. All right. And two of the ones I would point you towards is this one called Sleep Formula. And the Sleep Formula has in it, see, this has got valerian, lemon balm, hops, passion flower. That's a nice mix. All right. And again, you could even take that along with the magnesium glycinate. You could take that along with 5-hydroxytryptophan. You could take it along with melatonin because they're not in here, for instance. Okay. Another option in that sleep aisle is, well, here's the magnesium glycinate I recommend by Research Nutritionals. And then Research Nutritionals has a compound called Circadian PM. And this has in it some glycine, valerian, lemon balm, magnolia. This one has 5-hydroxytryptophan. So you would not want to take out another dose of it from a separate supplement, for instance. Okay. But any of these are the compounds that I was telling you about that could work for you. All right. All right. And then just to be clear, anyone can order from my store. The store has products in it that I used to use with my own patients in my Seattle practice. So I have experience working with them and have selected them based on quality. based on companies that I know put the real ingredients in their products. And then I've used these products because I have experience and I know they work. All right. So reasons that you may want to consider buying from me is I sell all my products at the lowest amount allowed by the manufacturer. Number two, I pay for your shipping if your order is over $50. Number three, I cover any sales taxes if you should happen to be in an area where you would have to pay those. And then finally, number four, we ship pretty quick. Any order that comes in Monday to Friday before 2 p.m. is filled that same day. If it's after 2 p.m., like on a Friday, it will not be filled till Monday, okay? And we rely on U.S. Postal Service to get our products to you, but they do leave us pretty quickly, all right? All right. All right. Thanks for that question, Blossom. All right. Bear with me, everyone. I am going down here to the end to make sure that everyone is still hearing me. No one is complaining that they can't. That's good. That's a good thing here this week, at least. All right. All right. Hello, Kathleen. Let's see here. Greetings, Dr. Ross. I'm resending my question from last week since the technical difficulties prevented me from hearing your answer. You often recommend IGeneX Immunoblot, but can you speak to those of us who only ever get IgG positive findings and have to deal with mainstream doctors who say that IgG only means old, past infection? This is the position of our current neurologist, even though my chronic adult son has relapsed and has experienced sudden extreme hearing loss in 1 year with no other explanation. Everything possible ruled out on 2 MRIs, lumbar puncture, except for inflammation at the cochlear nerves. Is there some science or link I can show the neurologist regarding IgG? Many patients have this issue with their mainstream doctors, and we know how hard it is to prove active infection on PCR and nanotrap testing, so we need them to believe our Immunoblot results. Thank you. Oh, boy, that's difficult. So let me just address meaning of IgGs real quick. So whenever you get one of the tests we can do to see if you have Lyme is this test technique through IGeneX called an Immunoblot. And an Immunoblot is a method used to see, is your immune system making antibodies that attach to the germ or proteins on the germ, all right? And so when you make antibodies, whenever you have an acute infection, the first family of antibodies you make is IgM antibodies. And in all infections, they're supposed to go away and get replaced by IgG antibodies, usually about 6 weeks to 3 months. And once you make IgG antibodies, even if an infection is gone, or if an infection is still active in you, you will keep making IgG antibodies, all right? So your doctor is correct on one hand in suggesting that IgGs are the memory of the immune system, and they will be positive if an infection is gone. But they will still be positive if an infection is still in you and active and it's chronic. And that's the point they're missing, all right? Unfortunately, I don't have a good scientific article to show them, all right? The only place you may... I don't know if he specifically addresses this, but take a look at, there's a book by Dr. Brian Fallon. That's Fallon, is a MD out of Columbia University. And his book is called Conquering the Divide. Let's do a screen share. I'll show you it here real quick. All right, so let's see. Okay, so this is his book on Amazon. It's called Conquering Lyme Disease, Science Bridges the Great Divide, all right? I believe somewhere in this book, he's got a section where he addresses the antibody reactions that people can have. And within there, he might talk about IgGs remaining positive even with active infection. He might, okay? All right. So you might take a look there. I don't have time to go through that with you right now, but he's got a well-referenced book. It is something you could show doctors if he does address it in there. And I'm not clear if he does, but I think he does, okay? All right. Let me go back here. Okay, so the dilemma when somebody has IgGs that are positive is the only thing you can say about IgGs is they mean that at some time that infection is in you and it could still be there. All right, that's the best you can say with an IgG. So the only way then to determine accurately if it's still active in you, there's a couple ways. One is to get a PCR test, which looks to see, do you have the genetic materials of that germ in you? However, with Lyme, it will only be positive about 30% of the time. So it will miss infections if they're still in you 70% of the time. But if it does come back positive, they can't refute that you got it in you if you got the genetic material in you. Okay. All right. And then finally, with tick-borne infections, the other way we know they're active is we have to look at what the symptoms tell us. And it sounds like you've got symptoms that would be suggestive of tick-borne infection, maybe even Bartonella here. I would need to ask you a lot more questions to see if I agree that they're active, but that's how we do it, is we look and see, do you have enough symptoms that suggest that this germ is active? All that the IgG tells you is that it's been in you at some time. It cannot prove it's gone though. Okay. All right. Thanks, Kathleen. Oh, one last thing. The neurologists are the worst. They have the same opinion as the Infectious Disease Society of America, which is that that Lyme is always easy to treat, and that if you remain sick after 3 to 4 weeks of antibiotics, that it's something called post-Lyme syndrome that has nothing to do with an active infection. Their national association, the neurologists, actually get rid of members who support something different. Okay, so they're just, it's a wall that's hard to conquer, unfortunately. Good luck to you and your son. Hello, John. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. I've been battling Lyme and Bart for years, and now mold positive too. One of my worst symptoms was insomnia caused by increasing pain during the night, usually starting around 2 a.m. I happened to take vitamin C at bedtime recently and noticed it helped. So I'm now taking 1,000 milligrams of ascorbic acid every night, and it is consistently helping. I'm trying to understand why this is helping and if there are problems this dose could cause or other options to consider. So I don't have a problem with you taking that dose, not at all. In fact, there's some people that will use vitamin C at that dose as a daily medicine as a good antioxidant, for instance. Okay. I don't understand the mechanism of why you're getting sleep with that. I don't even have a hunch of an idea. All right. There may be an explanation. If I had time to investigate it, I might come up with a good idea for you, but I don't know it off the top of my head. There's also a rule in medicine that I have, which is anything can happen to anyone with anything. All right. And what that means is there are common things that medicines and herbs do that happen in most people. But there's these odd things that a medicine or an herb or a supplement will do in people. We just can't figure out why. And the reason is we all have very unique genetics and how those genes get expressed, and very unique chemical processes in our body as well, too. All right. All right. Good luck to you, John. Hello, Molly. Oh, hold on here just a minute. Hi, Dr. Ross. You've been very helpful in my recovery of Lyme, Babesia, and Bart. Good. I started having muscle and arthritis symptoms about a year ago and started antibiotics and herbals 5 months ago. I know you said it's a long recovery. I still have the same symptoms along with swollen ankles, but the symptoms slowly seem to be getting better. I just read an article about how some symptoms might linger even after the diseases have gone. How do I know when to stop taking all the meds? Is it okay to take several antibiotics for so many months? Thanks. So the answer is yes, it's okay to take herbal or prescription antibiotics months on end, as long as you're getting benefit out of it. All right. On the other hand, we have to weigh out using antibiotics and even herbal antibiotics and the negative effects they may have on the bacteria living in your gut, or we call that the gut microbiome. All right. But you have to weigh risk and benefits. If you're getting more harm because you have active tick-borne infections in you, then it's worth the risk of what taking herbal or prescription antibiotics may do to your gut microbiome so that you can get the tick-borne infections under control. All right. So when it comes to determining how long do you treat, basically what we want to do is we want to treat. There's oh shoot, somebody's saying no sound again tonight. If people can hear me, can you write that you have sound? I need to know if we have sound tonight. Okay. Looks like, oh, thank you, everyone. I appreciate that. So the one person that said they don't have sound, who was this? This was... I can't even figure out who it was now. Thank you, everyone, for clarifying. We do have sound. I appreciate that. Good. All right. So there's two general rules of thumb I use to determine when it's time to stop, okay? And before telling you what those general rules of thumb are, I want you to know a couple things. So number one, if you have chronic Borrelia as a cause of your symptoms, that means chronic Lyme infection as a cause, an average treatment length is going to be 1 to 2 years. That's average. Some people are on the 3-year plan. Some people are on the 1-year plan, okay? All right. So just keep that in mind. That's a time frame that it often takes people to get well, okay? All right. For Bartonella and for Babesia, the time frame's a little quicker. For Babesia, generally we treat for about 4 to 5 months, excuse me. And Bartonella, generally we're going to treat for about 4 to 6 months. And people with Bartonella and Babesia, about 85% will get well of those symptoms in that period of time, that 4 to 5 months for Babesia, 4 to 6 months for Bartonella. There is a 15% group of people that it's very difficult to get their symptoms under control. We have to keep treating longer. All right. All right. So basically, having said that, when I'm treating, I treat to reach 1 or 2 goals. One is somebody is completely well and they are well for at least 2 months. And then I consider stopping the antibiotics. The reason I treat for them to be well for at least 2 months is I have found if I stop before they're completely well, for at least 2 months, there's a higher chance of getting relapse and not getting all the germs out, basically. Okay. All right. The other thing that I'll do is that for some people, because of having had tick-borne infections, sometimes there can be chronic injury related to having those infections. And so what I'll do is I will treat somebody as long as they keep getting better, and as long as they're not at a plateau for 4 or more months without any improvements. Now, if they reach a plateau, I'm going to be trying all kinds of things to try to get them to move forward. I'll be adjusting here. I'll be adjusting there. I'll be thinking about, do they have mold toxicity holding them back? I'll be thinking about, is it possible they have too many yeast in their intestines they developed that's holding them back? But I'm going to be adjusting. But if there's 4 months goes on and I've done all this adjustment and I'm not getting them to move forward, then I think it's also fair to say maybe you're done and to try and do a trial coming off the antibiotics and see if your health maintains or if it gets worse. If it gets worse, then you probably need to go back on those antibiotics again, okay? Unfortunately, we don't have any testing that tells us where we are. We don't have accurate testing that tells us if we're done. We don't have accurate testing that tells us if you're even getting better. There is no such testing. I know some of my colleagues go back and they try to retest, and I think it's fruitless. I just don't understand why they do it, because there's no science that tells us that repeating immunoblots, repeating ELISpots, repeating anything proves that you are better and proves that you will not relapse. None of that is there. Okay. All right. Thanks for that question, Molly. Hello, John. Let's see. Question. Hello, do you suggest for someone that has ulcerative colitis, eosinophilic colitis, or Crohn's disease, such as what herbs or antibiotics would you recommend for these three conditions? Also, for taking binders for mold, how far apart do you need to take them from medications and herbs so that the binders don't lessen the effect of the medications? And lastly, been taking methylene blue with no noticeable side effects at 50 to 75 milligram doses, yet taking it at 100 milligrams have experienced body arthralgia type pain and a fatigue type of tiredness almost immediately at 100 milligram dose multiple times. Is this a herx reaction, or what else could this reaction be from, and what does it likely indicate? Okay, so I'm going to work backwards, all right? So it's one of two things on the methylene blue. So number one, you may have hit a dose that gets you a whopping killing, all right? And so yes, you could be triggering a herx. What I would suggest, if you were my patient, what I would do is I'd have you stay at that elevated dose that gives you the effects and see if those worsening effects wears off after a week or so. If it does, then we know it's a herx. If not, then I think you need to drop back down to your lower dose that didn't give that problem, 75 milligrams, and probably the worsening that you're experiencing then at that 100 milligram dose is a side effect, and I don't know why it's giving you that side effect, okay? But that's what you're running into, right? So there's a good likelihood it's at 100 milligrams, you're just getting an effective killing dose. And again, if you are my patient, and you're not my patient, okay, so you should also talk to your own doctor about this. But if you were my patient, I might say, try to stay at that 100 milligram dose for about a week or so, see if the worsening symptoms lessen. And if they do, you know it's been a herx, basically. Okay, all right. All right, number two, and regarding timer of binders, and this could either be herbal binders or prescription binders like cholestyramine. So my rule of thumb is that somebody should stop all medicines, supplements, vitamins, prescriptions, beginning 30 minutes before they take their cholestyramine, and they should stay off of their medicines, prescriptions, supplements, and vitamins and herbs for 2 hours after taking their binder, okay? So the window that I tell people to avoid taking any medicine, supplements, et cetera, is 30 minutes before taking your binder, and then up to 2 hours after taking the binder. All right. Now, you can eat any time in that 2.5 hour window. The ideal time to eat, though, is actually 30 minutes after taking your binder. And the reason is 30-minute, when you take a binder, it's going to go into your stomach and it's going to work down into the small intestines. And about 30 minutes after you take it, it's worked down to the part of the small intestines where the gallbladder releases the toxins that have been stored up in it that were moved there by the liver, okay? And what happens when you eat, it triggers the gallbladder to contract, spitting out all these toxins that it's been storing onto that binder as it's going by, basically, all right? So you want to eat 30 minutes after taking your binder, because your binder will be at the place where the gallbladder squeezes its stuff out within the small intestines. Okay. All right. All right. And then in terms of prescriptions or antibiotics, herbal antibiotics for eosinophilic colitis, Crohn's disease, ulcerative colitis, there aren't any antibiotics, herbal or prescription, I actually recommend for those conditions, all right? Those are immune illnesses where the immune system is attacking, or autoimmune illnesses where the immune system is attacking a person. And generally, I am going to want to try to modulate the immune system. One of the things I might do is have a person start a peptide called BPC 157. That is a peptide made in the stomach, and its job, one of its primary jobs, is to actually keep the intestinal tract working right. We also know that it can help with repair joint pains, muscle pains, injured tendons, and nerves. And then finally, it helps balance out an overactive immune system, basically, all right? So sometimes in my patients with ulcerative colitis, herbally, what I'm going to wind up adding in, or with eosinophilic colitis, or with Crohn's disease, I want to add in some BPC 157, and usually I would start at 1 pill twice a day on that. Okay. All right. Good luck, John. MR, hello. Those are my initials, Marty Ross. But I suppose MR is different for you, actually. Hi, Marty. Let's see. I'm wondering if I can use combination of cryptolepis and cinnamon clove, oregano, and artemisia to treat Bartonella. I'm in premature ovarian failure and have read papers about how Sida acuta can compromise fertility. I have been on herb and on that herb and Utinia for 3 years and would like to switch it for a different one that could treat Bartonella just as well, but not be as hard on my fertility. Thanks. So cryptolepis is a great option. So cryptolepis, many of us until about a year and a half, 2 years ago, were using just to treat Babesia. But there were studies that came out of Johns Hopkins, I think it's about a year and a half, 2 years ago now, that showed that cryptolepis is actually a great herb for doing a lot of things. In the laboratory, it's wonderful at treating growing and persisting Bartonella, growing and persisting Borrelia, which is Lyme, and at treating Babesia, right? So it picks up all three of those, all right? In practical experience, when we start looking at all these herbs now that we can use for these germs, crypto is one of the strongest herbal options for Bartonella and for Borrelia. It's pretty interesting. It's pretty strong herb. All right. So I like cryptolepis. And then in terms, and we're looking at Bartonella here, I like the cinnamon clove oregano. That's a useful combination to remove biofilms on Bartonella. It's also very effective at treating growing and persister forms of Bartonella. In terms of Artemisia, it's not really going to do anything for Bartonella. It may help your immune system work a little bit better. It can deal with Babesia, but I would not call it an effective agent to be treating Bartonella. If you want to use a third item, and instead of that Artemisia, what I would suggest is Japanese Knotweed, actually. Japanese Knotweed has good activity against growing and persister Bartonella and growing and persister Borrelia, okay? So yeah, I mean, I sometimes will have people do combinations of crypto, the liposomal cinnamon clove oregano capsules, as well as Japanese knotweed. I was doing that before I stopped my practice back in May, but that was a combination I was finding to be quite effective, actually, okay? On the Japanese knotweed, I like to try to work people up to 30 drops twice a day. On the crypto, if I'm going to be using it for Bartonella, I like to dose it as 2.5 milliliters 3 times a day. If I'm using it for Babesia, I want to dose it at 5 milliliters 3 times a day. So I go really whopping doses for Babesia, but for Bartonella, you don't need to. And then on that cinnamon clove oregano, I like to do 1 capsule twice a day on that. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. Let's see here. All right. Bear with me here. Hello, Margaret. Let's see. Which infection, Borrelia, Bartonella, or Babesia, do you associate most strongly with sores in one's mouth? You know, I don't associate any of them with sores in a person's mouth. When I start seeing people with sores in the mouth, though, I'm wanting to know what is going on within the intestinal tract and whether they might have developed intestinal yeast overgrowth. What the relationship is between yeast in your intestines and your mouth is actually more of a relationship between skin surfaces and endothelial skin in your mouth and toxins released by yeast. So if you have too many yeast in your intestines, it's not uncommon to see mucous membranes develop sores up in the mouth, or your skin develop pimples or acne. The reason is that the yeast in your intestines release toxins that get absorbed to the bloodstream and then go downstream. And in the mouth, they can give you sores. And you can get skin rashes. You can even get pimples and acne from it too. So take a look in terms of things to think about if you might have too many yeast. Questions to answer would be, are you having increased sugar cravings? Have you noticed that you feel worse when you have sugar, meaning more fatigue, maybe even more sores when you have sugar? You want to do... I would want to know if you're having any gassiness or bloating. If you're a female, I want to know if you're having any vaginal itching or vaginal discharge. And again, I would want to know, are you having any worsening skin problems as well too? Okay. All right. Yeah. So those are my thoughts on that. Good luck to you. Hello, Cheryl. Hold on here just a minute. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. Could you show me how to order a test for Lyme and Bartonella IgM and IgG immunoblot from IGeneX? My doctor will get it ordered, but is not familiar with this lab. I've heard it can be confusing, and I want to make sure I get the right test ordered. Also, a friend of mine told me about transfer factor, and a lot of people claim they have had good results. I see that Research Nutritionals has that for tick diseases. When is it appropriate to take that? Thanks. Okay. We'll talk about transfer factors first, and then I'll go show you where you can get those. And then I will also, when we do that screen share, I'll pull up an order form for IGeneX, and I'll show you which test I like to do for the immunoblots for Borrelia and Bartonella. Okay. All right. All right. So everyone, transfer factors are chemicals that are made by white blood cells, which I will call the detective white blood cells. They're the type of white blood cells that first see that you have infections or that can identify you have an infection, but they don't necessarily attack that infection. They basically release chemicals that will mark the infection and also will turn the immune system on to start fighting that infection. And those chemicals are called transfer factors. Okay. Now, each type of infection we might get has a type of transfer factors that are unique to them. So Borrelia transfer factors are different than Babesia transfer factors, are different than cold virus transfer factors, for instance. All right. Now, Research Nutritionals, the manufacturer Research Nutritionals has a number of different transfer factor products. The one that targets infections that are found in chronic Lyme disease, meaning it targets, is a product called transfer factor L+, and it has transfer factors in it for Babesia, Bartonella, Borrelia, I believe Anaplasma ehrlichia, chlamydia pneumonia, I believe human herpes virus type 6, and I think cytomegalovirus too, but we'll go look at that together, okay? They have another product that that is often helpful in people living with chronic Lyme that have chronic virus infections, and that's a product called transfer factor plasmic that has in it a number of transfer factors against various viruses. They have a variety of other ones too. I'll show you those two in just a minute, okay? All right, let me do a screen share here. All right, so this is Marty Ross MD supplements again. Take a look at, we'll look at the Research Nutritionals tab here. All right, and their transfer factors, let's see, yeah. Got it. Okay, so this is their transfer factor L+ here. And when you go and look at their transfer factor products, if you're wondering what they target, you can read through this section here where I tell you at the top, what are they targeting, okay? So the transfer factor L+ is targeting Borrelia, Bartonella, Babesia, Ehrlichia, Epstein-Barr, HHV6, cytomegalovirus, and chlamydia, okay? And then the transfer factor plasmic. Actually, let me just make sure here if I put it in this section too. Yeah, so on this general description for each of the transfer factors, I do list what are they supposed to be active against. Okay, all right, all right, and then let's see here. Oops. Oh, here we are. Okay. All right. So this is the international form, but it's basically has the same. It's the same. What we're about ready to talk about is the same that you'll find on the domestic one as well too. So what you want to do on the order form, you're going to see they have a page with a bunch of panels. Don't do the panels. Come down for Borrelia to this section. Actually, let me blow this up for you. All right, so we're in this section here called Borrelia, and the Lyme and immunoblot you want to get is this test 325 and 335. So 325 is the Lyme immunoblot IgM, and 335 is the immunoblot IgG. Okay, that is you don't need the speciation. You don't need to know exactly which strain you have. Just getting the regular IgM and IgG will work for you on that. Okay. All right. And then for the Bartonella one, you want to come down to this Bartonellosis section, and you want to get this test 374 and test 384, which is the IgM and IgG immunoblot. Okay. All right. All right, Cheryl. Hope that gave you the information you need. Thanks for the question. Hello, Shanna. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. You froze right before reading my question, so I'm asking once again. Since anticholinergics increase memory loss, does taking choline help memory? That's a good question. All right. So, let me clarify that. So, in Alzheimer's disease, we know that one of the chemicals that gets affected is the brain's ability to make acetylcholine. Okay. So, acetylcholine is one of the chemicals involved in thinking. Other chemicals are serotonin, for instance, which is involved in our mood, but also is a thinking chemical as well too. All right, so there are more thinking chemicals than just the acetylcholine, is what I'm trying to say. As an example, there's serotonin. Okay, all right. So one way that I am aware of to raise acetylcholine is there are what are called cholinesterase inhibitors that are prescriptions that you can prescribe that block an enzyme that destroys acetylcholine, leading to more acetylcholine being available in the brain. Okay, that's one way to do it. All right. Another way to do it is to use methylene blue. So many of you are familiar with methylene blue, and that we're now using it to treat persister and growing Bartonella and persister and growing Borrelia. So both Borrelia and Bartonella, right? But it also has got some good science showing that it will help patch the function of your cell energy factories called mitochondria, so it can help energy. And therefore, by giving more energy, it can help thinking that way too. And it appears to have acetylcholinesterase inhibitor properties too. All right, so it's a cholinesterase inhibitor too, just like some of the other prescriptions are, all right? All right, but then when it comes to actually taking acetylcholine, and if you take more, does it help raise your acetylcholine levels in the brain? I have not seen anyone do that. I'm not aware that it works, nor am I aware of any supplements that are actually acetylcholine supplements, okay? So I'm not aware that you can do that and that it works, basically, all right? All right, thanks for your question. let's see here. Hello, Mirana. Let's see. Dr. Ross, I have used clarithromycin 10 days before testing, and my immunoblood and Arbon Lab IgG is positive. Let's see. My IgG is positive at 19, or is positive. 19, 18 are weak positive, and 2021 C are positive. IgM is negative. I do not remember a tick bite. I have fatigue, body pain, nausea, memory problems, headache, chronic myopericarditis. I'm not sure if it's from the viruses or Borrelia and how to know that. Also, positive EBV IgM, EBV-EA IgM, and past EBV infection. From time to time, high SACI-B antibodies. Does it mean every time when an IgM immunoblot is negative that I only have previous infection or Borrelia is active now? If IgG disappears in 4 weeks, what does that mean? CD57 is 15. Their range is 100 to 200. ELISpot is 2, weak positive on Borrelia. If I could ask, have I had Lyme or not? I'm not sure. If so, do I have chronic Lyme and actin now? Thank you. Could I order therapy from Treat Lyme site to Serbia? What therapy would you suggest? Okay. Boy, this is complicated. So to make a diagnosis of Borrelia Lyme, you have to consider 4 things, okay? Number 1, is there a chance you could have gotten it, all right? So people that have a known tick bite, there's a high chance, all right? People with no known tick bite, there's a lower chance. Doesn't mean it's 0, but you have to consider that, okay? Number 2, you have to look and see, do you actually have positive test? Number 3, you have to look and see if there's enough symptoms that suggest it. And number 4, you have to see if there's any physical exam findings, okay? The problem I have right now is that although you list some symptoms, I need to ask you a lot more questions for me to satisfy myself that you actually have symptoms that are consistent with Lyme or Bartonella or Babesia. And I can't tell that in this kind of a forum. Unfortunately, I just can't tell. All right. I am not sure why Armin is calling that IgG positive. The bands that mean the most to us, the proteins that mean the most to us are actually, we say a test is positive if you have antibodies against 21, 31, 34, 39, 41, and 83-93. If you have antibodies against 2 of those 6, we call that positive. So I disagree that this IgG is being interpreted as positive because I don't see that there's enough, that you're positive against enough proteins there. At least that's the way I'm reading it here right now, okay? So what I have to tell you is I don't know whether you got it or not. And this is where it's helpful to have a doctor that can sit down and evaluate you, ask you lots of questions, and try to sort through it, okay? The CD57 is low when you have Lyme, but there may be other things that cause it to become low. And even though the ELISpot, which is measuring whether your T cells have attacked Lyme, it came back 2 positive. That's not a solid positive, all right? So I don't know whether you got it or not, unfortunately, all right? Sorry about that. Good luck to you. Let's see. Will BPC help get rid of herpes? Thank you. In theory, it might. I wouldn't rely on it, though. So let me tell you what I mean by that. So BPC 157 is going to create greater immune balance, including the right balance of what are known as Th1 immune cells, so the cells that actually fight viruses, all right? So if your Th1 side of your immune system is working better, in theory, your immune system might be able to take care of the herpes, in theory, okay? I haven't seen it do that, but in theory, it could. It's just that I don't think that's what I would recommend to do. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Sharon. Hello, Deborah. Let's see. I have darkened vision post COVID last July. Also had darker vision with Lyme. Suggestions. Um, I would want where I would start is get a good eye exam. I would want to know if there was any injury to the retina, the back of the eyeball, or is there injury to the optic nerve itself? And the only way you're going to find that out is a thorough eye exam by an ophthalmologist who can do that. So I would need to know that information first. Okay. All right. Good luck to you, Deborah. All right, hold on here. Just a minute, guys. Hello, Zainab. Let's see. I think that's how you say your name. I apologize if I messed that up. Have you dealt with hearing loss as a symptom of tick-borne diseases? If so, how do you generally manage them in young people where age-related hearing loss is unlikely? Age 23 onset. Have strong Bartonella, Borrelia, and Babesia infections, and my hearing has suffered since. Audiologist found mild hearing loss at high frequencies. I'm thinking about this here. Just a minute. I have to be honest. I haven't seen hearing loss occur from tick-borne infections. I have seen some hearing loss associated with medications we use to treat tick-borne infections. So, for instance, azithromycin and clarithromycin sometimes can give you hearing problems, hearing loss. Usually it can be reversible for the most part when you stop those medicines. Sometimes they can trigger permanent injury, all right? Other medicines that we sometimes use in tick-borne illnesses is quinine and quinine-like medicines like Plaquenil. And sometimes they give you neurologic impairment of the hearing apparatus as well, too. But the actual germs themselves, I've never seen hearing loss as part of somebody's chronic tick-borne infections unless it's something that drugs had caused, basically. All right. All right. Good luck to you. Hello, Jackie. Let's see. Do you treat patients virtually? I'm California. The answer is no. I actually closed my clinical practice in Seattle in May, and I'm not treating anyone directly anymore. What I am devoting myself to these days is educating people with my Lyme information site. I am also still maintaining my store so people get quality products to help improve their situation. And then most recently, I established a support group for people living with Lyme. It's a membership support group where I'm one of the people that moderates and gives ideas, but we also have a lot of active members that talk among themselves, coming up with ideas. And that is something that could be helpful too. And then I have books planned down the road as well too. So I'm moved more into a supporting role and helping to give people ideas that they can take to their physicians, basically. So I'm not treating directly anymore myself. All right. All right. Thanks for our question, Jackie. Just do a screen share here real quick. All right. So I've mentioned it just now. So there's this online membership group I have called Lyme United, and it's a support group. And there's various ways you can interact with me. So if you think you get benefit out of interacting with me in conversations with Marty Ross MD, my free webinar, this forum, this Lyme United community is like my conversations with Marty Ross MD on steroids, right? You get a lot more chances to interact with me here. And there is a very knowledgeable group of people that have joined here too that can give you ideas as well too. All right. So the key spaces that we have here, we have this introduce yourself, which is our say hello forum, where we expect people are going to tell us who they are when they come on board. It's a nice way of being welcome to the community. There's a forum called Member to Member, where our members will write questions they have to each other or provide information to each other. There is a forum we call Share Your Wins on Wednesdays, and this is where people can tell us things that are going well for them and what might be working so that we can all learn from it. There is a weekly Monday to Friday office hours with Marty Ross MD, where I will respond to all written questions that have come in to me in the last 24 hours. And I spend an hour each day writing responses, usually between 12 and 1 p.m., and get answers back out to you. So that's one way to interact with me pretty regularly. Another way is through my live webinar that I have in Lyme United, and that's called Ask Marty Ross MD Live. What makes this webinar, this Marty Ross MD Live webinar different is it's a Zoom room. So I get to see people and I get to ask them lots of questions. And what this has evolved into is I take questions primarily from 2 people each week for half an hour each person. And I delve into their case and I'm able to give them a more thorough response of what I think might be a good idea for them to talk with their physicians about. Okay. And then the last 30 minutes of the hour and a half each week, I open it up for any question any person may have. What's interesting about this forum too, is that when people participate in this, after I take the questions and ask the person that has the main questions a lot of things, then our community members will pipe in and give ideas too. And they come up with some very interesting things that I hadn't thought of sometimes. So we come up with a community generated response to people's questions. And then finally, we have another forum called Unities Take Charge. And this is an area where our members can actually create their own events as well too. Okay, all right. So if you are interested in learning more about Lyme United, and I'm looking for members, we're up to about 75 members right now. We have room for more. Probably at about 100, I may cap it off though. But if you want to know more about Lyme United and the ins and outs of it and why you might want to join, take a look at my Lyme United page here. I welcome you to join. You'll get a lot out of it. If you get a lot of information out of my conversations with Marty Ross MD, you'll get a lot out of joining this community. All right. All right. All right. Hello, Natalie. Let's see. You have said that IGeneX Immunoblot is more sensitive to Galaxy PCR for Bartonella. Is that true for IGeneX's new ePCR Bartonella test too? Yes, it is. So the problem with any of these blood tests where you're drawing blood and you're drawing to see if you can gather the genetic material of that germ is the germ has to be swimming by the needle right when you draw the blood. And Bartonella and Borrelia don't readily live in the bloodstream right where you're sticking your needle. Okay, all right. So we know, for instance, that through regular PCR, not the enhanced PCR that they're doing, but regular PCR for Borrelia, that it will only find Lyme if it's in you 30% of the time. What IGeneX is doing with their enhanced culture PCR is that basically they're drawing the blood, they're putting it on a culture medium to try to get the germs that they acquire, if they do acquire them, to replicate more so they have a greater chance of measuring it. And they have a higher chance of picking up the germ if it's there, but they have not been able to tell us what their true sensitivity is. Same with Galaxy PCR. They have never done any studies that tell us how sensitive, what is the ability for their test to actually pick up the infection when it's there. We really don't know. I suspect it's probably off about 40 or 50% of the time, but that's just my suspicion. Versus I like the antibody test, which is immunoblot testing, better because antibodies are all over. They're not dependent on you putting a needle in and having a germ swim by, because even any blood that you put your needle into is going to have circulating antibodies made against an infection if you've had that infection. Okay. All right. Thanks for that question, Natalie. Hello, Josephine. Let's see. What test is needed in order to see if I have an active Lyme flare-up? So, unfortunately, we don't have fully accurate testing to tell us if you're having an active Lyme flare-up. As I mentioned earlier, the test that has the greatest chance of seeing if you've had an infection in you is the immunoblot antibody test from IGeneX, okay? All right. But remember, you're going to keep making antibodies even if the infection is out, all right? So that's not an accurate way of seeing if you're having a flare. Another test that may give you an idea if you have active infection in you is to do one of these PCR tests. But as I already said, it's only going to find it maybe 30% of the time. Maybe these enhanced culture PCR tests may find a little bit more, but there still is a sensitivity problem. Okay, now, if you get one of those enhanced culture PCR tests that IGeneX is offering now and it comes back positive, well, yeah, it means you got an active infection. My point is it may miss it a lot. And so a negative test doesn't mean you don't have it, all right? The other test that sometimes people will do when they try to see if they have an active infection is what is called an ELISpot, also called a T-cell activation test. And ELISpot testing is offered by Infectolab Americas as well as Armin Labs in Germany. And what the ELISpot test does is they basically take a bunch of T white blood cells from your blood and they put them in a test tube, and then they introduce proteins from the infection that they're trying to see if you have, and see if your T cells react by making certain cytokines, all right? And if those T white cells release a bunch of cytokines, that means that they have seen that infection you're being tested for. All right. And the reason that means active infection is generally these circulating T cells only live for 2 months. So if the test is positive, it means that sometime within the last 2 months, those T cells have tried to attack that infection or it's active. But what the problem is for the ELISpot test done by Infectolab, they're only looking to see if you have antibodies against one of a potential 8 strains of Borrelia. All right. For Bartonella, they only look to see you have activation against Bartonella henselae, not the other 14 strains that can give you Bartonella. And for Babesia, they're only looking to see if you have T-cell activation against Babesia microti, not the other 15 to 20 strains of Babesia that might trigger it, okay? So if you do an ELISpot test and it comes back positive, yeah, it means you have active infection. But again, if it comes back negative, it doesn't prove that you don't have infection anymore, okay? All right. So basically what people are left with is looking at what the symptoms tell you. And that's where it becomes an art, sitting down with your healthcare provider, reviewing symptoms and seeing if, based on what you say, what they think, do they think this could be active infection? All right. That's the best we have, unfortunately. Again, you could do an ELISpot or you could do this enhanced culture PCR. And if they come back positive, great, means you got the infection. But if it comes back negative, it doesn't mean you don't have active infection. And unfortunately, these tests are going to miss it a lot when you have active infection. All right. Okay. Thanks for the question, Josephine. Hello, Kelly. Let's see. Hi, Dr. Ross. My son is treating Lyme and Bartonella with doxycycline, 100 milligrams twice a day. Methylene blue, 25 milligrams twice a day, and fluconazole, 100 milligrams once a day. Is this protocol covering all angles of both infections? Should we add lubrikinase? Also, how long can he take the fluconazole? The methylene blue has been a real game changer for his energy level. How long can he stay on that? Thank you. So yeah, this treatment of doxycycline, methylene blue, and fluconazole is very effective against Bartonella, and and for Bartonella, it's treating both growing and persister Bartonella. And the methylene blue, that's part of that, goes after persisters and growing. It's also great at breaking down biofilm, Bartonella as well too. Okay, for Lyme, this is also an effective treatment against treating both growing and persister Borrelia Lyme. In addition, it treats the different forms, the different appearances of Borrelia. So Borrelia has spirochetes that can either be growing or persisting. It has a form of Lyme that moves inside of cells. We call that the L form. And then it also has cyst that can be growing or persisting. And yes, this regimen, all the things you're on, would pick up all those three forms in growing and persisting or hibernator states. Okay. All right. Now, if you did want to make this a stronger treatment, the thing that makes getting rid of Bartonella difficult is all these biofilms. And yes, methylene blue can help break it down, but adding lubrikinase in will make it even stronger in terms of breaking down biofilm. And in addition to this biofilm slime layer that makes Bartonella difficult to treat, Bartonella has the ability also to wrap itself in and among fibrin, which is your blood clotting protein, and form what some people call fibrin nest. All right. And it so happens that lubrikinase also helps break down the fibrin in the fibrin nest. In terms of the methylene blue and the fluconazole, I have people stay on them as long as they're getting benefit. I don't think there's a time limit to any of them, to be quite honest with you. Okay? All right. Good luck to you, Kelly. Good luck to your son. All right. Hello, Rick. Let's see. I have been dealing with chronic Borrelia, Bart, and Babesia since August of 22. Let's see. Chronic Borrelia, Bart, and Babesia since August 22. I went heavy on antibiotics, and then in July 23, switched naturopathic. In August 23, I was diagnosed as having toxic levels of 4 or 5 mold groups. Over the past 2 months, I have learned that I have hypogammaglobulinemia and extremely low CD3 and CD4 T cell levels. Is this what you would expect? I also have seen a significant uptick in basal cell carcinoma activity. Again, is this common? I'm a 65-year-old male that is otherwise in good health. Any suggestion other than treatments that I'm doing for the 3 Bs and mold? These protocols are mostly based on Buhner on bees and Nathan Krista on mold. Okay. Bear with me. I just want to look back through this again. So the hypogammaglobulinemia and low CD3 and CD4 may or may not be triggered by mold toxicity and or the tick-borne infections. In other words, it could be that you have those problems as an underlying issue that has made it easier to have the infections, or it's possible those infections are triggering it, and there's no way to really know. If your gamma globulin levels are so low, sometimes it helps to get intravenous gamma globulin infusions and see if that will make and help your situation do better. So I'm not sure if your doctors have looked at doing that with you, but sometimes there is a reason to go ahead and do that. In terms of an uptick in basal cell carcinoma, I have not seen that in the 20 years or so that I've managed tick-borne illnesses as being something that has been triggered by the tick-borne infections. Now, keep in mind, my practice is extremely biased because I practiced in Seattle, Washington, where we didn't have the confounding factor of a lot of sun exposure that might lead people to get basal cell carcinoma. All right. So in my Seattle practice, I did not see that. And I'm not aware of other practitioners noticing that or talking about that as well, too. Okay. All right. Yeah, I mean, the only thing I think of is I hope someone's talked to you about the possibility of getting gamma globulin infusions and see if that will make a difference. And you're following some good people in terms of what they recommend. The only way I could give a more thorough explanation would be to sit down and do a visit with you, and I just don't do that anymore, unfortunately. All right. Good luck to you, Rick. Hello, Kathy. Let's see. My child isn't getting well with antibiotics or herbals. She now has IVIG infusions, but nothing is working. She has Bartonella, Lyme, and co-infections. She gets better, but relapses. We have stopped all antibiotics and have been using Crypto Plus, but don't know what else to do. We detox with Epsom salts, but it's not enough. Kathy, I'm sorry for what's happening with your daughter. This is a type of situation where I just really would need to sit down and talk with you and find out exactly what she took, that is, what the reaction is. Was there anything at all? I know you said there wasn't anything here, but I'd like to actually review it and see where you are so that I can figure out what's the next best thing to try. All right. And I can't do that in this forum, and I don't have enough information for what you said here. Okay. Sorry about that. Good luck. Let's see. Joyce says, this is the second week in a row I'm not able to see or hear the webinar. I just get a black screen with a blue ring going around it in the center. Today, I can read a question from Blossom against the black screen, but no sound. I tried to reconnect, etc. Wondering if anyone else is having this problem. I don't think so. I asked a question earlier, Joyce, and it looks like everyone's hearing us okay. Bear with me here. I'm going to look at your contact information and see if there's a way that I can reach you later here. I'm sorry, Joyce. I'm not going to be able to help you there. Hello, Chris. Hello, Dr. Ross. Does methylene bill kill good bacteria in the gut like bifida? Also, is there a source of bifida that is not bovine because of alpha-gal? So in terms of methylene, so methylene blue, as many of you know, we're using for its antibiotic properties in treating Borrelia and Bartonella. Also, it can help with some dementia because it helps your mitochondria work better and helps raise acetylcholine levels. Okay, so those are some of the things we're doing and using methylene blue for. There is a researcher that looks at genetic profiles of people's stool, and she's got some initial data. Her name is Dr. Hizon, and she's got some data suggesting that methylene blue may lower bifidobacterium in the intestines, but she's the only one that's reported that. And we have to be careful about a single person's report about something, even if it looks like their scientific method is good. Okay. All right. So she may or may not be right. In terms of raising bifidobacterium, what I like to do is not necessarily have people take direct sources of it, but work to support the intestines so that the bifidobacterium that is there will regrow itself again and be more active. And one of the ways to do that is eating emphasizing plant-based foods in your diet. So diet rich in whole foods, beans, legumes, fruits and vegetables. We know that those are the things, the fiber in those is what ultimately is going to drive healthy bacteria makeup in the intestines, okay? Secondly, being on spore-forming probiotics are useful at refurbishing the gut, okay? Now, I want to be careful and I want you to understand the words I just used, all right? So spore-forming probiotics are bacteria that come from the soil, basically. And you can take them in a pill form because they're spores. The spore is their a protective way that they exist, and which will help get them through the acid levels of your stomach so they can get into the large intestines. Once they're in the large intestines, they come out of their spore form and they start acting like the bacteria that they are, okay? In the gut, what these spore formers do is they help literally refurbish the gut. They don't literally implant themselves and start growing in the gut, but rather they support existing bacteria that are there to do better, to grow better, and the remaining BIF that's there to grow better as well too, all right? The product that I recommend for the spore-forming probiotics is, for this purpose, what I like using is Megaspore Biotic by Multibiome Labs. I'll show you here in a minute. They've got some data that says that, yep, you do get increased bifidobacterium. Their product is dairy-free as well too, all right? So let me just do a screen share. I'll show you the product here. All right, so take a look. So Microbiome Labs manufactures this Megaspore Biotic. All right, and it's got 5 different spore-forming strains in it, and it is free of eggs, dairy, gluten, soy, nuts, and wheat. All right, so you may want to take a look at this. All right, and then if you're learning how to eat more of a plant-based diet, a program that you might want to take a look at is the Whole 30 food program. If you just Google Whole 30, you'll find them. They usually will start the first month by having you be free of beans and legumes as well, but eventually you get to add those in. But it's just a healthy way of eating that supports your gut microbiome. Okay, all right. All right. Good luck to you, Chris. Hello, Cecile. Let's see here. I'm getting really thirsty here all of a sudden. I had some salty pizza right before we got on here tonight, and I'm just kind of like really feeling dry here all of a sudden. Let's see. What is the link between Epstein-Barr virus, cytomegalovirus, and Lyme disease? Should I treat both at the same time, or first the virus and then Lyme? Thank you for your answer. All right. So in general, I don't believe in treating for chronic virus infections like Epstein-Barr and cytomegalovirus. And I want to explain why, but I just want you to know that. Okay. All right. So there are these viruses that are found in healthy people a lot. All right. And these common viruses are Epstein-Barr virus, which is the monovirus, cytomegalovirus, human herpes virus type 6, human herpes virus type 8, parvovirus B19, These are viruses that if we were to pull a bunch of healthy people off the street and check to see if they had elevated antibodies against these viruses, we would probably find in about 20 or 30% of healthy people that they have elevated antibodies against these viruses and they're healthy. Okay, I want you to keep hearing that. Okay, so having these viruses in you does not mean you necessarily can't deal with them. And in fact, most people have these viruses living in them and their immune system cohabitates with them and keeps them under control, just like we have germs living on our skin. Okay. All right. Now, the problem with a lot of my colleagues is when somebody comes in and they are ill, they'll check their to see if they have Lyme antibodies and Bartonella antibodies. And why don't we just check and see if you have antibodies against viruses? So then they automatically think, oh, you've got positive antibodies against viruses. It's active virus infections. And the answer is no, there's no proof it's active, because just having elevated antibodies against these viruses that are found in healthy people could mean that your immune system was doing great against these and still is. All right. And we cannot tell by looking at the amount of the antibodies as to whether your immune system lost the battle and that you suddenly have all these viruses raging and you are not. So antibody levels do not tell you if the germs are active, although some of my colleagues will say they do. They don't. All that they tell you is you're having a robust immune response. It doesn't mean your immune system isn't keeping them under control. Okay. So I will concede that it's possible if you have tick-borne infections and were cohabitating nicely with your viruses, and then you got sick with the tick-borne infections, maybe because of immune suppression related to the tick-borne infections, your chronic viruses are active. I concede that could happen, okay? The trouble is, though, again, at the beginning, we have no way of really measuring whether they're active or not. Just having a positive antibody test against viruses does not mean they're active. Okay, it just means you've got evidence that they're in you, and maybe your immune system cohabitates fine with them. So what my approach is generally I won't even look for chronic virus infections until maybe 9 months or a year into treatment. And the only time I go looking for them is if I've got somebody that we're doing all the things for tick-borne infection and yeast in the intestines and mold toxicity, and somebody's really stuck and still not getting well, then I want to measure the antibody levels and just see, do they have evidence that they've had these viruses in them? And if they have, then I usually want to do about a 6-month program of herbal approaches to getting rid of viruses. Okay. What I like to do, though, is first focus on the tick-borne infections, because if it is true that having tick-borne infections made it so these viruses got active, well, then the thing to do is get the tick-borne infections under control so that your immune system will start working better and put the viruses back under control. And that's been what my approach has been over time. Okay. Now, again, if you're about 9 months to a year in, and you're getting nowhere, then that equation changes. In which case, if you test positive for these viruses, then I like to do a program involving olive leaf extract, 500 milligrams 3 times a day, working as you can up to 1,500 milligrams 3 times a day. I like working with reishi mushrooms, 400 milligrams 3 times a day, because it turns on the viral fighting part of your immune system. And then I like working with these transfer factors that I discussed earlier tonight, a transfer factor mix called transfer factor plasmic. And I like to have people take 1 pill twice a day to help target your immune system to fight these viruses too. Okay. All right. So I'm going to show you an article where you can look more at this and my explanation a little bit more in there. Let me do a screen share here. All right. So take a look in my online Lyme guide. Look at infection treatment plans. And somewhere down here. Yeah. So this article called When and How to Treat Chronic Viruses in Lyme, a brief guide. Take a look at that. That covers what I just talked about with you. Okay. All right. Thanks for that question. Good luck to you. Hello, Lee. Let's see here. Are you aware of the cinnamon, clove, oregano supplement causing finger and toenails to turn dark while using it? I have not seen that happen. So I would not call it a common side effect. And again, as I mentioned earlier tonight, I live by a rule, which is anything can happen to anyone with anything. If that is happening, and you may want to consider stopping it. In case it is doing some harm, I'm just not aware of it doing that. Okay. All right. Talk it over with your healthcare provider too. Okay. All right. Good luck to you. All right, everyone. That's it for me for tonight. So good to be back here with you. I do believe that the webinar worked tonight. I don't see, other than that initial concern that maybe somebody wasn't hearing me, it looks like all of you stuck with me here. So good. I'm glad it worked out. And I'm sorry that this platform could be a little glitchy at times, but there's some good things I get out of it too. So bear with me. Again, if we keep having trouble, I'll look over at the Zoom platform for the webinars, although I've got to pay quite a bit to be able to do that. So I prefer this platform. Anyhow, keep your eyes out tomorrow morning. You'll be getting an email from me somewhere between 9 and 9:30 in the morning, which will announce that I have completed editing the video for you to see. It will include the link to where you watched the video, and it will include a synopsis of what we talked about. In addition, you'll be able to sign up for next week's webinar as well, too. I enjoyed being with you here tonight, and I wish everyone well. Good night, everyone.